We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Hey guys! This is part 4 of What If Naruto Became a Demon King. During the second stage of the Chunin Exams, Orochimaru made a terrible mistake in blocking the seal that held the Kyuubi. He gave birth to a being with more power than Raizen himself. Watch as Uzumaki Naruto takes the world by storm as the new Demon King. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 8, Bringing Your A-Game. A light breeze blew through the arena, kicking up a small cloud of dust that passed between the two opponents who were standing on opposite ends of each other. Naruto had a light smile as his posture was somewhat slouched, and he looked for all the world like he wasn't about to face the kid who was last year's Rookie of the Year. Neji on the other hand was sneering. The long-haired Hyuga genin opened his mouth to speak. He had found out a long time ago that if you insulted people while remaining as cool and collected as possible, it made your opponents angry and unable to think clearly. And because all Hyuga were taught to read other people, and keep an impassive face at all times, his mocking was made even more effective. However, before he could even get a word out of his mouth, the Hyuga prodigy found a foot being smashed into his face, hard. It felt as if the entire right side of his face had caved in, and his jaw had cracked. There was a moment where his head was snapped to the side, right before he was sent flying backwards. So surprising and painful was this hit that he couldn't even flip himself around to land on his feet, and ended up eating dirt. Neji skidded back across the ground for several feet, leaving a decent-sized trench in his wake before skidding to a stop. For several seconds he just laid there, wondering what the hell had hit him. What he hadn't seen and the entire audience had, or to be more accurate, seen but couldn't keep track of, was Naruto. The blonde had noticed Neji had been about to open his mouth, and already knew the overrated Hyuga boy had a propensity for flapping those gums of his. So he had decided to act before Neji could say anything, making liberal use of Shundo to appear in front of the long-haired genin and plant a boot in his face. The speed technique wasn't as effective as it usually was. Naruto figured it was about 4 times slower than his normal Shundo. Not that he hadn't expected something like that. Naruto was not using his Yuki, as that was poisonous to any human that was not a Jinchuriki, and he didn't want to kill the prick, just make him suffer, and even they would have trouble with his Yuki. Instead he was using his human chakra, which while much stronger than any genin and on par with the Kage, was nowhere near as vast as his Yuki. I can't use too many of those, he decided as he checked his chakra stores. That one move had used 1/4 of his reserves. That was the sole reason only high A or S-class demons could use Shundo, because it required vast reserves of power that most demons simply didn't have. I'll rely on my normal techniques from now on. Still, I'm rather pleased how this match has started out. Not wanting to lose his advantage, Naruto blurred as he ran towards the just now getting up Neji. The older genin saw him coming, and if the slow widening of his eyes and the dilation of his pupils were any indication, he was rather surprised by the blonde's speed. Neji was only just able to block the blonde's first attack, a palm thrust to the chest. He used the fluid style of the Hyuga clan, the Juken, to redirect the attack. At the same time he poured chakra into Naruto's arm, knowing that even if it wouldn't be as effective since he had yet to get the chance to turn on his Byakugan, it would still hurt the blonde attacking him. However, once more to Neji's shock, it seemed as if Naruto was completely unaffected by the invading chakra. The blonde merely twisted his body and launched a reverse heel kick, one which Neji dodged effectively by moving to the side. As the blonde continued to attack, Neji continued to block. Even without his eyes he could see the boy's movements, even if just barely. Little did the Hyuga prodigy know that all of Naruto's attacks were merely a distraction. The blonde Uzumaki's true plan came to the front when several hands sprung from the ground and grabbed onto Neji's feet and legs. Said boy looked down in shock. What? He didn't have a chance to say any more than that as Naruto grabbed the boy by the head and launched a devastating attack with his knee into the boy's face. The clones disappeared and once again the Hyuga prodigy was sent flying. Up in the stands everyone was staring in utter shock as Uzumaki Naruto, the dead last of his class and who many people thought of as either the loser, or the demon, depending on their prejudice against him, beat the kid being hailed as the greatest prodigy to a bloody pulp. Holy shit! Kotetsu said, his voice denoting just how shocked he was, if the currently gaping jaw he had didn't. Uzumaki is pounding the Hyuga into the ground. Really? I hadn't noticed, replied Izumo in a dry tone. Though from the way his wide eyes never left the battle, it was clear he was just as surprised as his partner. I think we may have to reevaluate our opinion of the kid. He's nothing like I expected. Kami, he's brutal. Oh man, this is gonna ruin me, Kotetsu whined. I out nearly 1,000 Ryu on the Hyuga to win. That should just teach you not to gamble, said Izumo in a chiding tone. Kotetsu just slumped in his seat. Whatever. Every single Hyuga in attendance winced as they watched their prized shinobi receive an earth-shattering punch to the stomach that sent him flying backwards, where he crashed into the wall and left a large crater. Nijioni-san is getting really beaten, said a small little Hyuga girl. Hanabi was the little sister of Hinata. She had dark brown hair with long bangs, and white eyes, a common trait shared by all Byakugan users. She was wearing an armless blue V-neck shirt with a mesh blouse underneath and blue shorts. I was told no one could beat a Hyuga in Taijutsu. Isn't our Juken supposed to be the best? Father? She looked up at her father, Hyuga Hayashi, who was the current clan head of the Hyuga clan. He had long dark brown hair and featureless white eyes like all members of his clan. He was wearing very traditional, loose-fitting robes with a cloak. The man didn't even look at his youngest child as he stared in shock at seeing the son of his brother and the best Hyuga in generations get decimated. Can't do much when you can't even activate those white eyes of yours, can you? Taunted Naruto as he launched a barrage of fists Neji, who grimaced as he did his best to block them. Several managed to get through, and each one made Neji feel like he was being hit with a steel bar. Even those that barely touched him hurt worse than anything. Not even Lee could hit as hard as the blonde before him could. Neji was once again launched away when Naruto managed to sneak a foot in between his ribs. The long-haired Hyuga winced as he skidded back, falling to his knees the moment he stopped. Neji managed to lift a hand to wipe off the blood that had accumulated near his mouth, spitting the amount that was in his mouth out as he glared fiercely at the boy in front of him. Everyone knows the Byakugan is the most powerful dojutsu in the world. You're just afraid to face off against me at my full power, Naruto chuckled. Is that your way of trying to trick me into letting me use your eyes? He grinned and cocked his head to the side. Still. I don't want anyone saying I didn't fight you at your best. Very well, I'll let you use those eyes of yours, and I'll even going one step above. Here, catch. Neji blinked as his hand instinctively caught the tiny object that Naruto had thrown at him. What is this? He asked, looking at the small green bean in his hand. It's called a senzu bean, Naruto said. They have amazing regenerative abilities, by using your chakra to promote healing. Eating a senzu bean can heal even people who are on the verge of death. They are very rare, in fact, I only know one place that grows them. And it's not in the human world, the blonde said to himself. Senzu beans were actually grown in Makai, and were a secret of the Kitsune clan. Kyuubi had told him that she had created the senzu bean by splicing several different plants and herbs she had found in both Makai and the human world. And only she knew how to make them. How do I know it's not poisoned? Asked Neji with a sneer. Ha ha ha. Are you serious? Asked Naruto, laughing the boy's comment off. I don't need to poison you to beat you, I've been kicking your ass for the past few minutes just fine without help. Of course, you can just toss it if you want. Though if you're going to do that I would rather you give it back. Those things are pretty rare after all. Neji grimaced as he realized that Naruto was right. Much as he didn't want to admit it, the blonde was beating him handily. He placed the bean in his mouth as swallowed. The effects were almost instantaneous. All of his wounds regenerated in an instant, his broken bones healed, his cuts left his body, all in all it felt as if he had not just had his ass kicked. However, rather than be grateful, Neji gave Naruto an unpleasant grin. You're going to regret healing me. Now that I'm at full strength you stand no chance. It seems fate is on my side. Heh, you think so? Alright Hyuga Neji, let's see if you can beat me. Naruto reached up to his face and pulled off his sunglasses, crushing them in his hand before he let them drop. The grin he was wearing threatened to split his face in half. Let's test your dojutsu against mine. All around the stadium people were talking about the eyes of Uzumaki Naruto. Not many people knew of the Rinnegan, the most powerful dojutsu, great three-eye techniques, in the world and the one that was said to hold mastery over all the world's jutsu. Some wondered if this was some kind of trick of the demon. After all, there was no way the Kyuubi brat could have a dojutsu. Was there? For those who were in the know however, and knew the legend of those eyes, stunned would be too small a word to describe what they were feeling. Many couldn't help but wonder, how did Uzumaki Naruto, the dead last, the loser, the demon of Konoha, gain the most powerful of all three Daisan dojutsu? None were more stunned than Jiraiya, who had hidden himself in the very back row of the stadium to see his godson. I can't believe it, he muttered with a voice that would have let anyone near him know that he was in a state of shock. Twice in a lifetime, it shouldn't be possible. How could he have the Rinnegan? Likewise, up in the Kage booth, Sarutobi was in a similar state. The Rinnegan, he breathed, feeling like he had just gone through 3 heart attacks. When did he get that? How did he get it? The disguised Orochimaru was also having a hard time coming to grips with what he was seeing. How is this possible? He has the Rinnegan. The same eyes as the Rikudo Sennin, who was said to have given us jutsu. The same eyes as him. He cursed his stupidity in writing the boy off now. The Sharingan was a pittance compared to the power of the Rinnegan, the ability to master all 5 chakra elements. With that power there was no telling what he could accomplish. I can still get him if I play my cards right. It may not be now, but those eyes will be mine after the Chunin exams. Asuma, are those what I think they are? Asked Kurenai, her voice in a state of shock. I don't know, what do you think they are? Asked Asuma. There was no sarcasm in the man's words, he too couldn't believe what he was seeing. The Rinnegan. Yep, looks like it. I don't get it, said Sakura. Who cares if Naruto Baka has that Rinne thingy? It's nothing compared to Sasuke-kun's Sharingan. And yet again the little slag opens that big flap of her before she knows what she's talking about, said Enko. Listen up, Pinky. The Rinnegan is the most powerful of the 3 great dojutsu, more powerful than both the Sharingan and Byakugan combined. It is said that the wielder of the Rinnegan can completely master all 5 forms of nature transformation that form the basis of ninjutsu. It was said that in times when the world is in disorder, a person is sent down from the heavens to become either a god of creation who will calm the world, or a destroyer who reduce everything to nothing. Very little else is known about those eyes, but the legend goes that the man who gave us chakra, the man who due to his power and desire for peace was known as the Kono Yo no Kyusishu, the savior of the world. Sakura gawked for a moment, before huffing and turning away. Sasuke-kun still better. Enko, Asum and Kurenai all rolled their eyes at the girl, no longer caring if they got to her or now. As far as they were concerned, Sakura was a lost cause. What are those eyes? Asked Neji as he stared into the dark blue eyes with the silver ripple pattern. They're called the Rinnegan, a dojutsu that was said to have belonged to the Rikudo Sennin, the man who brought us ninjutsu, Naruto said, smirking at the look of shock upon his opponent's features. Now, I didn't heal you just so you could gawk at me. Come, Naruto lifted his hand and made a get-over-here gesture. Neji hesitated for a moment before charging towards Naruto who stood completely still. When Neji was less than a foot away Naruto pointed his palm towards the boy and muttered, Shinra Tensei. The Hyuga genius only had enough time to see the flare of chakra before he was sent flying backwards. He slammed into wall, feeling as if he had just been hit by an Akimichi trying to run him over. He barely had time to even register just how much pain he was in before he heard the blonde mutter, Bansho Tenin, heavenly attraction of all creation, and Neji was once again flying. This time he came soaring towards Naruto as if someone had hooked his chest with a fishing line and was reeling him in. Naruto cocked his fist back, and the moment Neji came within range, smashed it right into the older genin's gut. Neji hacked up blood as his stomach caved in on itself. He flew off the fist, smashing into the ground and skidding along before coming to a stop. He would have tried to get up, but it felt like all of his internals had been liquidized. He couldn't anything save the pain he received from the punch. As his vision began fading out, Naruto came into view. "Ha," the blonde said, that smirk still on his face. "Looks like having your dojutsu turned on didn't change a single thing, did it?" Those were the last words Neji heard before darkness claimed him. Naruto yawned as the fight finished. He couldn't help but find fighting humans to be boring, even those Saint Beast guys gave him a better fight, and they were pathetic. Well, except for Suzaku, he was pretty decent though half of that was on account of Naruto being arrogant. Oh well, can't pick all your fights. He looked over at the proctor who was currently gaping at him, face pale like he had seen a ghost. Yo! Proctor-san, how about calling the match? Ginma blinked several times as the words registered. Right. Shaosa. Uzumaki Naruto. The silence was so vast it was like you could hear a pin drop. Everyone was so shocked by what had transpired that no one even knew what to think. Naruto shrugged as no one clapped. He didn't rightly care what these people thought. Hundreds of years from now, he would barely even remember these faces. He was beginning to walk off the arena floor when it started, clapping coming from the Kage booth. Soon enough the fire daimyo, who had come to view the village's talent, began clapping as well. Applause began coming in from other areas. Naruto could make out Asuma, Kurenai and Enko clapping enthusiastically, with Enko even yelling, "Way to go Gaki," at the top of her lungs. He thought it was odd that she was so psyched about him winning, but shrugged it off as irrelevant. Smiling, Naruto held a hand in the air. The crowd began to roar its approval. Truthfully, their applause didn't mean much to him. Only the approval of the few people he cared about in this village really counted. Still, he couldn't deny the feeling was nice. He looked up at the Kage booth and looked at the Sandame, who was clapping and smiling proudly at him. He nodded once before turning around and making his way up to the fighter's booth. As soon as Naruto walked into the fighter's booth, any and all conversation that had been taking place stopped. Everyone turned to stare at him, expressions ranging from shocked to fearful. He couldn't hold in a chuckle when he noticed that no one could meet his gaze. Even Gaara was unable to keep his stare. He walked over to where Shino was standing and greeted the other genin with a nod. Shino returned the nod with one of his own before going back to staring at nothing. Neji lost. Tenten couldn't help but rub her eyes several times, thinking it would fix her vision, because there was no way this could have happened. Neji lost. Neji never lost. Ever since they had been genin, Neji had never lost a match, never lost his cool. Neji never lost. I can't believe Neji lost. What's more, he did not only lose, but he lost to the dead last. An extremely powerful dead last who just beat Neji in an almost straight-up taijutsu match. A dead last who, if the mutterings around her were to be believed, held the most powerful dojutsu in the entire world. A dead last who in the span of 1 week went from a skinny loser with a loud mouth, to a hunk with muscles on his muscles and a typical bad boy attitude to boot. Just who are Uzumaki Naruto? Oh man, Raikage-sama is not going to like hearing about this. Hearing about what? That one of the Hyuga he's so set on getting just got his ass kicked? Or that Konoha now has a person wielding the single most powerful dojutsu to have ever existed? Both. Well, there's not much we can do. We'll just inform Raikage-sama of this latest development and let him figure out what to do. Right. Ha! Enko crowed as she danced around in her seat. It was rather disturbing, or highly erotic, depending on which gender you asked, to see the woman squirming and dancing in her seat. Did you see that, Nai-chan? Did you? Did you? I knew that Gaki was going places after I saw him during the prelims. Yes, I saw what happened, same as you. Kurenai rolled her eyes at her friend's joy. I'm not sure what you're getting so worked up over. You look like someone just gave you Orochimaru's head on a silver platter. The red-eyed beauty was the only person besides the Hokage who could even mention the Hibi-sanin around Enko without getting her head bitten off. Yeah. I just feel this connection with the kid, Enko said, calming down. We're the same, him and I, you know. I do. If anyone could understand how Enko felt, it would be Naruto, who was even more hated than Konoha's snake mistress. You know, I was thinking, seeing as he did such a good job, maybe I should give him a reward. Enko. Kurenai looked scandalized as Enko licked her lips. She knew her friend was just joking, or at least partially joking. It would surprise most people who didn't know, but Enko was a virgin. Another surprise would be that Kurenai, who most considered to be colder than ice towards men and a hater of perverts, wasn't. What? Said Enko, grinning as she noticed the blushes on the faces of damn near every girl within hearing distance. The little Hyuga girl had already passed out from a nosebleed. You can't tell me you weren't thinking of fucking him as well. I mean, look at the Gaki. He's got muscles on his muscles, and you know what the ANBU have said about his stamina. Kurenai blushed a deep shade of red. Naruto's stamina was rather legendary, able to keep the ANBU chasing him after a prank for hours on end. No one knew the true limits of the blonde's stamina. If that same endurance could be applied into the bedroom. Damn it, Enko. Kurenai shouted, shaking her head. Why do you do this to me? You said something very similar about the Yondaime when he was still around too. And besides, Naruto's what? 12? 13? He's way too young for us to even be thinking about. The red-eyed woman trailed off and blushed at what she had been about to say. Ah, don't be such a prude, Nai-chan. Enko chirped with a laugh. He's a shinobi, isn't he? That means he is more or less an adult. Old enough to kill, old enough to drink, old enough to fuck. Besides, look at that body, does that look like a 13-year-old body to you? Asuma listened to the two women talking and sighed. Maybe Shikamaru was onto something when he said women are troublesome. Unfortunately for him, his words must have been too loud, as both Enko and Kurenai stopped talking and turned to him with full-on glares and killing intent. Damn, I should learn to keep my mouth shut. Will Uchiha Sasuke and Sabaka no Gaara get down here for the next match? Called Genma after the nurses had managed to get Hyuga Neji on a stretcher and left. Genma actually felt pretty bad for the kid. While getting pulverized like that would be tough for anyone to cope with, getting the crap beaten out of you with thousands of people watching was just humiliating. A few feet away, Sabaka no Gaara appeared in a swirl of sand, arms crossed in his standard pose. His face held a look of impatience about it, though even that was barely visible to others due to how impassive his face was. The crowd began to grow restless when Sasuke had yet to show up. Many were wondering where the last loyal Uchiha was. Boos began to sound from the people who had come here just to watch the Uchiha fight. Uchiha Sasuke, come down to the arena floor or you will be disqualified this instant. Genma said again after 5 more minutes of waiting. Sir, Uchiha Sasuke still hasn't shown up, Rado whispered into his Hokage's ear. The crowd is starting to get restless. Sarutobi sighed in both disappointment and worry. Rado was right. The Hokage could hear boos being shouted out. People wanted action, especially after seeing such an incredible battle from the previous match. It seems we have no choice, Sarutobi said. Uchiha Sasuke is hereby disqualified from the Chunin exams for being late. The Kazekage turned to look at him. Hokage Dano, I think you should reconsider. Many of the people here came to see the Uchiha heir. Not showcasing him could cost you a lot of business. The aging Hokage looked at the Kazekage, or to be more accurate his disguised student. He pondered the benefits of bumping up Sasuke's battle for later in the day. However, he remembered the message that Naruto had given him. When Uchiha Sasuke is late, and considering who his sensei is, we both know he will be, disqualify him. That will disrupt Orochimaru's plans long enough for you to somehow get a message to your forces to let them know what is going on and prepare. Yes, the Sandaime decided that Naruto's idea held more merit than Orochimaru's. I had not realized you cared about how much business Konoha received, Kazekage-sama, Sarutobi said in a slightly chilling tone. It was the kind that you let know you had stepped over a line, and going any further would be unwise. If Uchiha Sasuke cannot show up on time for something as fundamental as an exam for his own promotion, then I can't expect him to show when something even more important comes up. Thus, Uchiha Sasuke is not qualified to be a Chunin anyways. Uchiha Sasuke is to be disqualified. He looked over at his Jonin guard, relay that to Genma. Hi! Said the Jonin before he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Damn that old man! Orochimaru seethed at the Hokage's words. Of all the times for him to grow a backbone, it has to be now. He calmed down after a few seconds. He could still make this work. I will have to change my plans, but that's alright, this could be an opportunity for me. That Hyuga boy was not able to give Naruto-kun a proper test of his abilities, and I doubt the other genin here will be able to from what I have seen. However, Gaara can. Yes, the plan was perfect. He would use Naruto and Gaara's battle as the new stage on which his invasion would begin. He might even get lucky and Naruto would be weak enough from fighting Gaara for capture. I understand, Hokage Dano, he said to Sarutobi. Forgive my impertinence, I was just so excited to see how my Gaara stacked up against a shinobi of Sasuke's caliber that I forgot myself. Sarutobi nodded, it happens to the best of us, I'm afraid. Now, let's get the matches started. Due to not showing up on time, Uchiha Sasuke has been officially disqualified. Boos were met with Genma's announcement, and from the look on Gaara's face he also seemed displeased that he would not get to spill someone's blood. The next match will be between Sabaku no Kankuro and Aburame Shino. Will both contestants please come down to the arena floor? Shit! This isn't good, thought Kankuro. I don't want to show off any of my new abilities with Crow before the invasion starts, Proctor-san. Kankuro called out. I forfeit. More boos were met with that announcement, with many of the people beginning to get angry. They had come here to watch people fight, yet only one had happened so far and the one everyone had been waiting for had been cancelled. Needless to say, Kankuro's forfeiting had not gone over well with the people watching. However, Ginma merely called out the next two people who would be fighting, those being Temari and Shikamaru. Temari opened up her fan and flew down to the arena, making a big show of her abilities. Shikamaru on the other hand, what are you still doing up here, Shika? Asked Naruto as he looked at the lazy genin with his Rinnegan eyes. This is all too troublesome, Shikamaru said, yawning. I think I'm just going to forfeit. If you even think of forfeiting, I am going to kick your ass to the moon and back, Shikamaru. Actually no, Naruto smirked as a thought came to him. If you don't compete, I'm going to tell Yoshino-san that you quit the Chunin exams before your first match. Shikamaru paled. You wouldn't. He knew what would happen to him if his mom heard he quit before he even fought. She would use her special frying pan no jutsu, copyright patented _ and beat his ass so hard it would make anything the blonde in front of him could do pale in comparison. Every Nara feared that jutsu, which had been specifically created to get a lazy male Nara off their ass and work. Naruto gave the lazy boy a very disturbed grin, the fact that his eyes were being overshadowed by his hair and all he could see were those creepy swirl eyes only made it worse. You are obviously forgetting who you're dealing with. Remember, I'm the guy who dyed the entire Hyuga clan's clothing bright orange and hung their underwear in the streets of Konoha. The guy who snuck into ANBU HQ and put itching powder in their clothes. The guy who... Alright, I get it. Jeesh. I'll go fight the troublesome woman, you damn troublesome blonde, Shikamaru grumbled. Good. Oh. And Shika. Shikamaru turned back from where he had been walking to see that creepy smile on the blonde's face. Make sure you work hard or I'll still tell Yoshino you were slacking off. Shikamaru gulped but nodded as he scurried from the room. Naruto watched the lazy genin go and leaned against the railing to look out at the arena with a content smile on his face. This should be interesting. Temari waited with a scowl on her face as she watched Shikamaru move towards the ring at a snail's pace. Seriously, it had taken this kid like 15 minutes just to walk onto the arena floor. Get your ass over here before I beat the crap out of you with my fan, lazy bones. She shouted in a threatening tone. Whatever, troublesome blonde, Shikamaru muttered as he stopped 2 meters away from Temari. It was hard to tell since his typical slouched posture and lazy expression hadn't left him, but the few who knew Shikamaru could tell he would rather be anywhere than where he was. Are both fighters ready? Asked Genma. His answer was for Temari to fully unsheath her fan and for Shikamaru to just let out a lazy yawn. His sweat dropped. Right, well, Hajime. Kamaitashi no Jutsu, sickle weasel technique. Temari launched her jutsu the very moment Genma started the match. She swiped her fan at the Nara genin and launched a powerful gale of cutting winds. The wind tore up the land as it headed for Shikamaru, smashing into him and sending him flying backwards, only for him to disappear in a puff of smoke and a log to take his place. Where are you? Shouted Temari as she looked around the clearing with narrowed eyes. Come out or I'll force you out. Man, this is so troublesome, thought Shikamaru as he crouched down behind a thicket of trees. He looked up at the clouds that were lazily passing by and sighed. Man, sometimes I wish I was a cloud. Just floatin' along, going wherever the breeze takes me. That's my style. I just don't like putting effort into doing anything troublesome. The only reason I became a ninja was to do whatever I wanted. Gah, who knew this would be so much work? Maybe he should just quit the Chunin exams now. That would show everyone, it's not like he cared what these people thought. All I ever wanted in life was to marry a regular girl who isn't too ugly and not too pretty. Have 2 children, first a girl, then a boy. Retire after my daughter is married and my son becomes a successful ninja, and spend the rest of my life playing shogi or go. Then die of old age before my wife. Nara Shikamaru, like his father before him, the famous Nara Shikaku, and his father before him, Nara Shikamo, held the same uninspiring dream to be relatively average shinobi. Which was why it was so unfortunate that all males of the Nara clan held a vast intelligence and propensity for planning innumerable strategies against superior opponents. Fine. If that's how you want to do it. Temari made another swipe with her fan. Kamaitashi no Jutsu. The large gale of cutting winds tore into the trees, slicing through many of the branches like they were made of paper. Shikamaru was thankful that he was hidden off to the side of the trees that got hit. Of course, as was his lot in life, Temari sent another wind jutsu into the tree line, this one getting dangerously close to hitting him. It's troublesome, but I get I've got no choice, Shikamaru thought to himself as he made several hand signs. Temari's next jutsu slammed into the area he was in, covering the entire spot in a large cloud of dust. Temari looked at the devastation her jutsu had caused and smirked. That ought to take care of him. What? The smirk left her face as a shadow shot out of the dust, moving towards her at a fast pace. Acting quickly, Temari folded her fan and began to backpedal as she attempted to keep away from the shadow that was chasing her. It was surprisingly fast, and almost got her. Thankfully it stopped, its form staggering, before it was forced to retract. Temari used her fan to draw a line where the shadow stopped. I see your angle now, Temari said, her eyes narrowing as she looked at Shikamaru, who was holding a hand seals. You almost had me for a second there, you're pretty clever. With that cage main jutsu of yours, you can manipulate any shadow you're in. The wall's shadow for instance, or the trees. But there's a limit, isn't there? No matter how far you stretch it, your shadow can only move so far. Isn't that right? Shikamaru's face twisted into a grimacing smile. You got me. Temari smiled as she found out the weakness of his jutsu. He could only stretch his shadow to a total of 15 meters give or take. So long as she stayed out of his range, he wouldn't be able to touch her. Staying over 15 meters away from him meant she would have to use long-range attacks, but those were her specialty, so she wouldn't have any problems. This battle was as good as over. Shikamaru sighed as he closed his eyes and put his hands together in a circle pattern. Temari and everyone else that didn't know Shikamaru wondered if the new hand sign was some kind of jutsu. Only Asuma and his team knew otherwise. What kind of hand sign is that? Kankuro wondered out loud as he too saw what Shikamaru was doing. Is he going to use a new jutsu? Doubtful, said Naruto, who had heard the cat-suited genin from where he was standing. Kankuro turned to his, shuddering a bit as those creepy eyes came into view. The blonde saw this and grinned. That's not one of the standard 12 hand signs that ninja use for jutsu. I doubt Shikamaru knows any jutsu that are not of his clans, and all of those rely on a specific hand sign. Even if that was a seal of some kind, it wouldn't do any good. The only jutsu that rely on hand seals that don't follow the standard 12 zodiac system are the Kekkai Genkai elemental jutsu, such as Hayaton, ice, or Yoton, lava. No, this is something else. Humph, Kankuro snorted as he turned away from the blonde. Whatever he's doing, it won't matter in the end. Now that Temari has figured out his range, that kid is toast. I wouldn't sell Shikamaru out just yet, Naruto warned with a grin. Everyone still in the fighter's booth looked at him. He may be the laziest bastard I've ever known, but Shikamaru is probably the most intelligent person you'll ever meet. That might not mean much when it comes to a straight-up fight, but in the world of ninja, when strategy is the most important factor in battle, he's got it where it counts. When did you become so smart? Asked Ino. Naruto turned to his fellow blonde and gave her a stare, his left eyebrow partially raised. Ino blushed and looked away, unable to meet his gaze. What I mean is, you've never said anything this, well, intelligent in, like ever. Naruto shrugged. I was never stupid, Ino. Uneducated? Maybe, probably. But then, I never had any parents in my life to teach me how to do basic things like reading and writing, so naturally I struggled when it came time to enter the academy. Unlike everyone else, I was still trying to teach myself these basic skills when you and all of your friends had parents who would help you. By the time I had caught up to everyone else in those skills, I was so far behind that I just didn't care anymore. Ino's face fell at his words. Truthfully, she had never really thought of how badly Naruto would have had things as an orphan. She only knew him as the troublemaking kid her parents told her to stay away from. Thinking back on it, she remembered that when their sensei had first asked Naruto to come up and read, her fellow blonde had struggled with it, and that had been the start of when people in her class made fun of him. Sorry, I guess I didn't realize how hard that would be. The Rinnegan bearer looked at Ino with slight surprise. He hadn't interacted with her much, but she had never been very nice to him. Then again, no one his age had been nice to him. The closest people he could consider friends when he was younger were Kiba, Choji, and Shikamaru, and that was only when they were doing something Irika wouldn't approve of. Once school was out, they were the same as everyone else. It's fine, he said. Most people never think about what it's like being an orphan, especially kids. They usually tend to take things for granted, like having parents to teach them, help them with their problems, or even just tuck them in at night. Most think what they have is what everyone else has, and don't really realize that some of us are less fortunate than others. Everyone looked at Naruto with varied reactions. Some of the genin looked like they were re-evaluating their opinions of him, a process that had already happened several times in the past month since the blonde's change. A few, like Ino, couldn't help but feel bad about how they had treated him in the past, without even thinking about how hard it would be to try and do things without having parents to help you. Gaara was likewise thinking about the blonde Uzumaki. So he is like me? He has had to rely on himself, and yet, he doesn't fight for himself. What is it that makes him so strong? Why is mother afraid of him? Shikamaru opened his eyes. They looked different this time, no longer were they a pair of lazy eyes that didn't seem to care about anything. Instead, they held a look of determination. It was an odd change and only Temari was close enough to see it. So you do have some fighting spirit, Temari said with a smirk as she opened her fan. I was beginning to wonder. And now that you seem to be taking this seriously, I think it's time we get the fun started. Kamaitashi no Jutsu. The blonde Suna Kunoichi launched another fierce gale of cutting winds at Shikamaru, who was forced to cover his eyes as the jutsu came at him. He pulled a kunai out of his pouch and quickly ran towards another tree. Temari scowled. Hiding isn't going to do you any good. Shikamaru grit his teeth as the wind howled around him. Gashes appeared on the trees and several branches were sliced off, with a few of the smaller ones hitting him in the face. Acting as quickly as he could, he began taking off his jacket, leaving him in just his mesh shirt. The windstorm soon died down and Shikamaru got ready to make his first move. Come on out, coward! Temari said as she threw another Kamaitashi no Jutsu at the tree line. Troublesome woman, Shikamaru thought to himself as he tossed a kunai through the dust cloud. What? Temari's eyes widened as she saw the kunai sail towards her. She jumped out of the way, not wanting to use a jutsu on a single kunai. Before she could even begin thinking she was in the clear, however, another kunai came at her, this one having been hidden in the shadows of the first. Like the previous one, Temari dodged this one too, moving to the side and letting it sail past her. She looked back towards where she knew Shikamaru to be hiding and saw his shadow coming towards her. She smirked, thinking she was safe because she had already gotten his range down and was still behind the line. Only the shadow moved past the line. Temari's eyes widened as she jumped back, the shadow stopped. She looked over at Shikamaru who was smirking at her. You know, you're pretty quick on your toes, he commented idly. Now I get it, you weren't hiding, you were biding your time. The longer the shadows on the more range you have on your jutsu. She figured that was the correct answer because Shikamaru just smirked at her. This meant there was a new variable to Shikamaru's reach, the longer this went on the more reach he would have. She would have to end this quickly or he may end up being capable of reaching her anywhere. A sudden shout of Temari above you caused her to look up. There was something floating in the air. What is that? As it came closer she realized it was Shikamaru's jacket. Her eyes widened as it cast a shadow on the ground, right over her opponent's. Crap! She shouted as she jumped back. Just in time Shikamaru's shadow began to expand and chase her again. It stopped at about a meter. Temari realized she would have to end this soon and was just about to launch another wind jutsu when she heard something. A sizzling sound coming from behind her. Turning her head her eyes widened as she saw the kunai she had let pass her directly behind her, a small explosive note attached to it and currently sizzling. Reacting on pure instinct she jumped back just as the note sizzled out. Yet it didn't explode. What? She questioned, right before she felt her body freeze. Moving her eyes down, as it was the only part of her body she could move at the moment, she saw that Shikamaru's shadow had caught her. They roved back over to the kunai with the explosive note, which still had not gone on. I see, the explosive note was a dud. You threw that first one, knowing I wouldn't waste chakra on a single kunai. I would let it stop in front of me, but you kept one hidden in the shadows, making it so that I would instinctively dodge it. After that you used your jacket to extend the range of your jutsu, all the while bringing me closer to the kunai I dodged. When I heard the sizzling sound, I would think it was a real explosive note, and would be forced to jump back. Right into your shadow. Yep, you definitely catch on quick, Shikamaru said with a lazy grin. And now this is checkmate. He began to walk to the center of the arena, forcing Temari to follow his movements. The two stopped in the middle of the ring, Temari struggling to move every step of the way. Shikamaru raised his right arm into the air, forcing her to do the same. Everyone held their breath, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a kunai. The entire crowd was now watching in anticipation, wondering what Shikamaru's next move would be. Okay, I forfeit. A mass round of face faults accompanied Shikamaru's announcement. What? Stammered Temari, her eyes wide and a look of shock evident on her features. I'm almost out of chakra, Shikamaru explained. This technique will only last 15 more seconds before I run out, then I'd have no chakra left to fight with. I don't know about you, but I don't really feel like going up against guys like Naruto and your younger brother when I don't have any chakra to use. As he finished speaking, the shadow that had Temari obeying his every will withdrew from her shadow. See? Shaosa. Sabak no Temari. There was no clapping as Shikamaru began walking towards the arena exit, leaving a stunned Temari behind. The lazy genin looked up at Naruto, who was staring back at him with those new eyes of his. Truth be told, I still have around half my chakra left. But if what Naruto said is true, then I'm going to need it for later. Flashback. Hey Shikamaru, Shino, mind if I speak with you two for a moment? Shikamaru looked over at Naruto for a moment before shrugging. As he and Shino made their way over, Ino made a bid to follow them. Sorry Ino, Naruto said, however, this is a guys' meeting only. What? What do you mean a guys' meeting? Ino said with a loud huff. Why can't I listen to what you have to say as well? Oh, do you want me to tell you about how I think Temari should fight topless? Asked Naruto, just loud enough that Temari could hear him. He grinned when both her and Ino's faces turned beet red, whether from embarrassment or anger didn't matter, it was still amusing. You pervert! Ino shouted, her face was red and there was anger in it. But if the way she was glaring at Temari were any indication, it was not anger at him. At least not all at him. Thankfully she didn't try to hit him. He would have had hurt her if she did. You're just saying that because you want me to say the same thing about you, Naruto replied airily. He left the angry blonde and walked into the hall. So what is this about Naruto? Asked Shikamaru, noticing the sudden change in the blonde's demeanor. He looked a lot more serious now that he wasn't in the fighter's booth. Naruto looked around for a moment before leaning in, forcing the other two Konoha genin to do the same. Sometime during the Chunin Exams Suna and Oto are going to launch an invasion of Konoha. Shikamaru's eyes went wide, and though no one could see Shino's features, a buzzing sound could be heard coming from his Kikai bugs. I want you two to be careful not to expend too much chakra in these fights. You're going to need it when all is said and done. How do you know this? Asked Shikamaru, his tone no longer lazy. While he may not like having to work, he knew that there was a time to be lazy and a time to work. Let's just say on my way back to Konoha during the 1-month training period, I ended up running into some foreign ninja where they shouldn't be. It was an evasive answer, but Shikamaru and Shino both understood the gist of what he was saying. Would this be the same month where you got those new eyes? Asked Shikamaru. Naruto chuckled. Sure, let's go with that. Anyways, you should be getting ready for your match, Shino. You know Kankuro is a puppet user, but he also uses poisons. So be careful. I appreciate the advice, Shino said with a nod. Try not to kill. I'm hoping to convince Suna to side with us since Orochimaru killed their Kage. But wait, said Shikamaru, if Orochimaru killed the Kazekage then who? The lazy Nara's eyes widened and Naruto nodded. Yes, Orochimaru is the one currently sitting next to the Hokage. Not a pleasant thought. Anyways, I want you to be prepared to do your part. As Naruto began walking back into the fighter's booth, Shino began moving down to the arena, and Shikamaru followed the blonde demon shinobi, his mind a whirlwind of activity. When had Naruto gotten so serious? How had he gotten that information on Oto's and Suna's invasion? That wasn't like the old Naruto, nothing at all like the goofball he knew. This new Naruto was something else. Something troublesome. Proctor-san. I forfeit. Shikamaru looked at Kankuro when the Suna genin spoke. Why would he forfeit? especially when he had been so keen on bragging about making Chunin during the prelims. Unless there really was an invasion about to happen. Which meant Shikamaru would need to keep on his toes. What are you still doing up here, Shika? Chapter 9, Dry as a Desert. Naruto sighed as he watched Ino get pulverized by Temari, who fought her as Shikamaru had forfeit the match. The match hadn't lasted more than maybe 4 or 5 seconds at most. Nearly the moment Genma had begun the match, Ino had been blasted into a wall by Temari's Kamaitachi no Jutsu. Not that all of it could be blamed on Ino, Temari had looked pretty steamed before the match began. No doubt she was upset about more or less losing to Shikamaru. After all, she may have technically won, but it was only due to the laziness on Shikamaru's part than any ability or skill on hers. Still, the fact that Ino had lost so quickly did not reflect well on her abilities, or those of her teacher. Honestly, I don't know what we're going to do with these girls. Sakura and Ino are so pathetic. It's like they never even took the time to really train themselves. That is what happens when one spends so much time staring at their crush and not training, Shino said, pushing his glasses up on his nose so that they flashed in the sunlight. I hear ya, Shino, Naruto said with a heavy sigh. Man, I wish our kunoichi were like Temari, strong and hot. Not little twig girls who believe dieting is the best way to lose weight. Honestly, it was something he didn't understand. Ino and Sakura, along with all the girls in his class, spent their time doing one of two things, staring at Sasuke, or dreaming of having said Uchiha's babies. They never trained, never put any effort into getting strong or being a good ninja, believing their knight in brooding armor would come and rescue them. He couldn't figure out how the girls in his class, especially when the ones that did pass were all said to be exceptionally bright, could ever think like that after having seen how Sasuke acted. Naruto liked putting fangirls into two categories. One type was at the very least useful, either because they went the only way that gave them any respect and trained like crazy to gain enough skill so that they could impress their crush. Or they had useful connections, which had their own benefits though not as much as those with skill. The other type, seemingly the one Ino and Sakura belonged to, were completely and utterly useless. They spent more time stalking their crush than they spent on their training, would spend their money on makeup hair care products instead of ninja supplies and weapons, gave their looks more attention than their muscles, used perfume instead of scent killers, and did the worst possible thing a ninja could do, diet. Any idiot knew that you lost weight from training, and that even gave the advantage of gaining muscles and strength. Honestly, the only real use those girls had as ninja were cannon fodder, and since there were laws that prevented them being used as such, they shouldn't even be allowed to graduate the academy. Maybe it was thanks to Kyuubi giving him this new perspective, or perhaps he had always had it, but Naruto could never comprehend why women liked to simulate interrogation by starvation. Like they thought not eating would actually help their figure. And once they started starving themselves, they would give anyone who was actually smart enough to exercise and was not afraid to eat a healthy meal in their presence hateful and malicious glares. Even a simply bandit with no knowledge on chakra could defeat, and it wasn't surprising that they were extremely popular amongst rapists since they had good looks, little bark and no bite. And no matter how many times you told them, how many points people made about how unhealthy and dangerous it was, they never changed, believing their knight in shining armor would come and rescue them. Having spent months with Sakura and having already been in several dangerous, life and death situations, Naruto knew it to be true as she still hadn't even made an attempt at getting stronger. It was the most frustrating thing in existence, and personally, Naruto couldn't wait to get off of Team 7 so he wouldn't have to deal with her crap. Will Uzumaki Naruto and Sabaka no Gaara please come down to the arena? Naruto smirked as he heard his name called. He looked over at Gaara and grinned. Are you ready, little Tanuki? He asked, getting 3 shocked looks from the Suna Genin. Well, Kankuro and Temari looked shocked. Gaara's face was mostly impassive, but the blonde saw a hint of apprehension. He chuckled, no doubt they were wondering how he knew of the redhead's host. He absently wondered if Shikaka knew he was the descendant of Raizen. And if so, had it told Gaara? Not that it mattered to Naruto whether or not Shikaka knew of his relation to the most powerful demon to have ever graced Makai. It wouldn't change the end results of this match. He jumped out of the fighter's booth, landing on the ground with a dull thud. He walked over to the middle of the arena, where Gaara appeared in a swirl of sand a few seconds later. Are both contestants ready? Asked Genma. He received no answer, but then he hadn't expected one from this battle. Gaara never really seemed to talk much anyway, and Naruto was being exceptionally quiet. Then Haji. A swirl of leaves picked up between the two soon-to-be combatants. Hatake Kakashi and Uchiha Sasuke appeared within its center. Sasuke had changed his look. Instead of the blue outfit, he was now clad in a black pair of pants and shirt, with white bandages along his arms. He had elbow pads on and black shinobi sandals. He and Kakashi stood back to back in what Naruto figured the pair felt was a cool opening pose. He snorted, maybe if they had been on time. "I'm sorry, are we late?" asked Kakashi, rubbing the back of his head as he gave everyone an eye smile. "As a matter of fact, Kakashi, you are. So late in fact that Sasuke's match was over 2 hours ago. Because he couldn't show up on time he was disqualified," Genma said, much to the shock of Kakashi and the anger of Sasuke. "What do you mean I'm disqualified?" asked Sasuke, flaring his Sharingan at the proctor as if it would somehow convince the man he should be allowed to fight. Meanwhile Kakashi was looking at Genma in shock. He had been positive that Sasuke would still be allowed to compete. After all, many of the people who came here had done so simply to see his prized student fight in this tournament. Genma rolled his eyes. If this kid thought he was going to bend to his will just because he brought out a pair of jutsu-thieving monkey marbles, then he had another thing coming. You had your chance to fight, and you blew it by showing up late. If we can't even expect you to show up on time for your own match, then you don't deserve to be Chunin anyways. Now step aside, I've got a match to run. It was then Kakashi and Sasuke saw the competitors. "How dare you steal my match?" Sasuke said, glaring at Naruto, who just sighed at the raven-haired kid's anger. It wasn't his fault the Uchiha had decided not to show up on time. "I stole nothing from you," the blonde replied. "You lost your chance at competing by taking up your sensei's bad habits. Perhaps you should remember this and use it as a reminder of why it's important to be on time. Then again, you were probably too busy licking Kakashi's ass to even know what time it was. I'll teach you not to insult your betters, dobe." Sasuke crouched down low and went through 3 hand seals. Lightning began sparking from his hands, right before the Uchiha disappeared in a blur of speed. Naruto raised an eyebrow at Sasuke's newfound speed. Not because he was fast but because it was all fake. The blonde easily recognized the Shunshin movement technique, which made a person speed up so quickly it seemed as if they had teleported. Naruto could easily follow Sasuke's movements, and the moment the Uchiha appeared at his side, Naruto was already in motion. He grabbed Sasuke's face, lifting the boy up before he even had time to react. Then he proceeded to slam the other genin head first into the ground. The earth cracked and cratered slightly under Sasuke's head. The lightning technique, which Naruto recognized as the Chidori, disappeared from Sasuke's hand and the boy's body went limp. Naruto took his hand of the genin's face to reveal the Sasuke's eyes were still open, though they were rolled up into the back of his head. Naruto picked up the Uchiha by the shirt and chucked him at Kakashi. "Hatake, take your butt buddy and leave. This isn't over, Naruto. Attacking a fellow genin is an act of treason," Kakashi warned, his eyes glaring at the blonde. "In case you didn't see, Sasuke attacked me first," said Naruto with an incredulous snort. "Of course, everyone knows of your blatant favoritism, and I'm not surprised you're showing it here as well. Now get the fuck off the arena floor before I smash your face into the ground as well." Kakashi narrowed his eyes, but left with an unconscious Sasuke over his shoulder. "Now maybe we can get this thing started. Proctor-san, if you would." Right, the first match of the second round, Sabaku no Gaara vs Uzumaki Naruto. Hajime, Sasuke Kyuin. Everyone who was in the general vicinity of one Haruno Sakura winced as the ear-splitting, glass-breaking shriek came out of the pink-haired girl's mouth. It was the kind of sound that one would never expect from a human girl. Not even a banshee could make that kind of sound. Then again, maybe the girl wasn't completely human. Perhaps Sakura was some kind of human/banshee hybrid and it gave her unparalleled shrieking powers. It seemed like legit theory to the many people that were sitting even remotely near her. Said girl was by Kakashi's side instantly, grabbing Sasuke and attempting to wake him up. Of course, attempting to wake up was a completely relative term. She was screaming out his name with worry. Thankfully her volume was at least slightly turned down. However, the way she was, touching him, was definitely not something most people would do when trying to wake up someone. Well, unless they were attempting to wake them up by disturbing them so thoroughly that it forced them to wake up. Were the girl more attractive, it might have even been a nice wake-up call. However, given the girl's shrieking, that overly large forehead, and the fact that she was flatter than a billboard made her seem almost like a man. Then again, maybe Sasuke was into that kind of thing? Many people knew the Uchiha had girls throwing themselves at him left, right and center, and yet he never did anything with them. He wouldn't even go out on a date. It made a few of the more observation and less clan-obsessive shinobi wonder. Perhaps Sasuke played for the other team. Having some trouble with your genin, Kakashi? Asked Asum with an amused grin once the ringing from his ears stopped. Perhaps this will teach you to follow your own motto. What was it again? Oh yes, something like, those who don't follow the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. I believe it was something like that. Kakashi scowled. I didn't abandon anyone, I've been helping Sasuke this whole time. I think he was talking about your other two students, Kurenai said with a frown. Her respect for the copy ninja had been continuously decreasing ever since the preliminaries, where she had learned that he hadn't taught Sakura or Naruto anything. Of course, that had been because he was too busy training the Uchiha, which was another black mark as far as Kurenai was concerned. She didn't show favoritism to any of her genin, even though she was extremely close to Hinata. You do know that Sasuke was not your only student in this exam, and Sakura's battle with Ino was pathetic. Asuma winced since he knew Ino had done no better, especially after this latest match. Kurenai ignored Sakura's obnoxious protest on her performance as she glared at Kakashi. Her techniques and strategies were all academy-level work. I would have at least thought you might teach the girl a few genjutsu or something. I'm not very good at genjutsu, was Kakashi's excuse for not teaching Sakura. And there was no point in training Naruto, it's not like he would have won just because I was training him. And yet he did win, Asuma pointed out. He not only won, he beat Neji to a pulp. How much better would he have been if you had actually trained him from the beginning, rather than wasted all your time on Sasuke? I don't need you two giving me a lecture, Kakashi said, scowling behind his mask. No, what you need is an ass-kicking, Enko said from her spot. You neglected two of your students, showed favoritism to one, disregarded your own code, and are still trying to come up with excuses for your current lack of intelligent decisions. Now why don't you head somewhere else? I have no desire to sit near someone who would abandon his own students. She hated people who would abandon someone else just because they thought that person was worthless. It reminded her too much of Orochimaru for her taste. Kakashi looked at all of the others and noticed none of the looks he was receiving were friendly. Well, except for Sakura, who was more or less ignoring him in favor of molesting the still-out-cold Uchiha. Deciding that discretion was the better part of valor, and fearing that the females who knew him may do something too painful to him, like burn his Ika if he stayed, Kakashi left in a quick shunshin. Leaving his prized student who was still being tended to by a Sakura, who disgustingly enough was cooing to the Uchiha and doting on him like some kind of sycophant. Naruto and Gaara stared at each other as Genma called a start to the match like they hadn't even heard him. This had been the battle Naruto had been waiting for. During his time in Makai he had fought many different kinds of demons, all of varying strength. However, he had never faced off against a demon higher than a B-class. Shikaku was an A-class demon lord, and while he did not have the raw power Naruto did, he had better knowledge of his own power than the blonde Uzumaki. That alone made this a worthwhile test for him. For a moment neither moved. Naruto was just content to see what the insane Suna Genin would make as his first move, and Gaara was just staring at the blonde. Mother is afraid of you, Uzumaki. Why is this? The redhead finally asked. There was a look of confusion on his face. It was almost funny to see how confused he was without hearing the voice of Shikaku in his head, though any humor the situation may have had was tempered by the fact that he didn't seem capable of making choices without Shikaku telling him what to do. Why won't mother talk to me? Naruto raised an eyebrow as he heard the name Gaara called Shikaku. He shrugged the amusing thought of Shikaku being a mother, especially when his mind conjured an image of said male demon wearing a pink apron and stiletto heels, and grinned. Your, mother is afraid of me because it knows that I have the power to kill it. Now, if you're done playing 20 questions, why don't we get this party started? As Naruto began to walk towards the red-haired genin, having decided that if Gaara wasn't going to bring the fight to him, then he was going to bring the fight to Gaara. Said genin held his head and began shaking it back and forth. Mother doesn't like you, mother recognizes that stench and mother doesn't like it. Well, isn't that just too bad, Naruto replied. Mother's going to have to get used to it because I'm going to be kicking your ass really soon. Just as the blonde took another step, Gaara began screaming. Mother wants your blood, Uzumaki. Mother will not be cowed by you. Mother refuses to be afraid of you. Sand burst from the gourd on the redhead's back, as Yuki began pouring out of Gaara like a sieve. Naruto watched in an odd fascination as the sand split into 4 different parts, which then split into 4 more, and then began to morph as soon as they touched the ground. The creatures that formed looked odd. They didn't possess any solid shape, and were constantly changing. Some had 4 arms, others had 2, some had what looked like swords for arms, or axes, maces. They were constantly changing and shifting. The only thing all 4 had in common was the single eye on top of the small lump that more or less acted as the head. Naruto looked at the 16 creatures that were converging on him with a large grin. So this is how you want to start things off, eh? Well, that's fine with me. I could use a little exercise before we get to the main event. Let's rock. The sand creatures came at him all at once, converging on his location like the blonde was a lit beacon. And with that hair, maybe he was. Naruto burst towards the first one in a blur of motion, coming in hot and driving a knife-edged hand right through the creature's eye. It let out a loud shriek, the kind that sounded like it was coming from a dying beast. Naruto was just thankful this creature's shrieking wasn't anywhere near as bad as Sakura. Then it burst into sand particles and converged on the other 15 sand monsters left. Acting with the speed of a veteran fighter, Naruto flew forward towards his next target. The creature swung its left hand, which was currently in an axe form, but was too slow as the blonde moved under the attack. One of Naruto's hands came up, slicing off the weaponized hand before his foot lashed out in a high kick that caught the creature in the face. He would have finished it off, but by now 2 of the sand beasts were upon him. Naruto ducked under a sword swing that was meant to decapitate him, jumped back from a kick from what looked like a hammer foot, then jumped to the left in time to miss the mace bearing down on his position. The mace weapon hit the ground with earth-shattering force, and Naruto decided to lash out with his own attack. He channeled Yuki into his foot, deciding that since he was facing a demon, or a boy possessed by a demon, turnabout would be fair play. His foot began to take on a red hue as it lit up like a fire, blazing red energy poured off the foot as smashed it into the mace. The mace blew up in an explosion of sand, along with the rest of the creature who could not withstand the Yuki Naruto had unleashed. A smirk came to Naruto's face as he set his target on another creature. H. Hinata cried out in pain as she shut off her Byakugan as soon as Naruto began pouring on the power. Hinata-chan. What's wrong, Hinata-chan? Cried Kiba as Hinata rubbed her eyes furiously. It's Naruto-kun C chakra, stammered Hinata. That attack. It's so powerful. Looking at it with my Byakugan is like staring directly into the sun. It's so powerful it hurts just looking at it. No, that is not chakra, Hizashi thought to himself as he heard his eldest daughter's words from where he was sitting. That is something else entirely, but it does not belong to the Kyuubi. What is that power? Naruto thrust his palm into a sand creature's face, unloading a powerful blast of Yuki that annihilated the entire beast's head. The body soon followed, bursting into sand and coalescing around the other creatures. A frown marred Naruto's face as he looked at the remaining creatures. He had destroyed 7 so far, there were only 9 left. However, those 9 were significantly larger than when he had started. The sand from the other monsters I beat are being added to the remaining sand creatures. That meant the more he killed the larger the creatures would get. Maybe I should just destroy them all in a single shot. Deciding his previous plan was the best, Naruto jumped high into the air. He formed a gun shape with his left hand, with both index and pointer fingers sticking out, and held onto it with his right. Red and black Yuki began to form above the tip of his fingers in the shape of a ball. Akumo no Taiho, Demon Gun. The ball deconstructed as Naruto pushed his Yuki out, exploding and turning into a large 15-foot wide cylinder of energy that shot towards the ground at insane speeds. It exploded in the midst of the sand monsters, decimating them all with a single blow. When all was said and done, all that was left to let people know the sand creatures existed was the large crater in the ground. Landing on the ground, Naruto looked at Gaara and grinned. That was a nice warm-up. But I think it's now time we got down to the main event, don't you? What was? Shouted Ino as she stared at the crater in the ground, her eyes so wide it looked like her eyeballs would fall out of her orbital sockets. Did you guys see that? He just blew up all of those things in a single attack. What kind of attack was that? I don't know, said a stumped Asuma. I've never seen anything like that, and that chakra. It was even worse than what I remember feeling from the Kyuubi, Kurenai said, staring at the destruction Naruto's attack had lain waste to. She shivered. Kurenai may have been young when the Kyuubi attacked, being 13 years old and just a Chunin at the time. But she could still remember the bloodlust and power that had rolled off of the Kyuubi in waves. But this. The Kyuubi felt like an infant compared to the power behind Naruto's attack. Everyone heard her words, but no one said anything. Whether what Kurenai said was true or not, no one could deny that whatever the blonde Uzumaki had done was a powerful attack. Many of the civilians that had hated Naruto for being the Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi, were now feeling fearful that it had come to take its revenge on them for their treatment of it. What kind of jutsu was that, Hokage-sama? Asked the still disguised Orochimaru. On the inside the Hibi Sennin was cackling in glee. What power? What strength? I was a fool not to give him my gift in the forest, but it matters not. Soon, Naruto-kun, you will be mine. I couldn't tell you, Kazekage-sama, Sarutobi replied evenly, even though he was shocked at the attack Naruto had done. The attack greatly reminded him of the few times he had seen a Bijidama, tailed beast ball, only on a slightly smaller scale. What's more, the blonde had not used the Kyuubi's chakra, however he had not used his own either. Whatever power he had used was far more powerful than even the Kyuubi. Which should not be possible, since the Kyuubi was the strongest bijou in existence. Well, whatever that was, it was very powerful. Agreed. You are powerful, so very powerful. Looking into Gaara's eyes, Naruto realized that the boy was no longer in control. The scara of Gaara's eyes had become black, containing yellow irides with pupils that each takes the shape of a black four-pointed star with 4 black dots around it. They were the eyes of Shikaku, and it was obvious the boy was possessed. What power! What incredible power! Your power will be mine. Sand swelled around Gaara, covering his body. Black markings began to spread out along the sand. It wasn't long before Gaara became a miniature version of Shikaku, with large, claw-like hands, stubby feet and a large raccoon tail swishing behind him. Well, aren't you just the ugliest thing I've ever seen, Naruto said with a laugh. That's a face only a mother could love. Shut up, you. The Shikaku's voice came out, a loud whining sound that was almost as bad as Sakura. Naruto frowned. Kyuubi had told him Shikaku had a grisly voice. I'll steal all your power. You can try, you overstuffed bag of sand, Naruto taunted. He held out his hand and beckoned the possessed genin forward. Come, Rhea. Shikaku threw himself forward rather fast for a guy on 2 stubby little legs. He swiped a claw at Naruto, which extended in its attempt to hit the blonde. However, the demon shinobi just grinned as he charged Yuki into his fist, meeting the claw in an explosion of power. Shikaku's entire arm was blown up and the creature reared its back to scream in pain. Ah! Damn you! Damn you! I'll kill you! It began attacking again, with all it had: claw swipes, wind attacks, sand attacks. Nothing it threw at the blonde Uzumaki worked. Naruto wove around the claw swipes, occasionally using a knife-edged hand to cut off the claw's fingers. He used his Yuki attacks to neutralize the wind attacks, and whenever the sand tried to crush him, Naruto would release his Yuki and blast the sand away like it was nothing more than a minor irritant. Naruto ducked under another claw swipe. His hand shot up, covered in an intense red and black energy that took on the shape of a blade. With movement quicker than the Kuroi Senku himself, Naruto sliced off the entire clawed arm like it was paper. Shikaku reared back as if struck, roaring out in both pain and frustration. The demon lord attacked again, fighting with that much more zeal as it did everything in its power to kill the blonde who was more or less mocking its inability to kill him. The Shikaku seemed to be getting frustrated that it had yet to even land a hit on the genin, who had already destroyed his arms at least 10 times. With a loud roar, Shikaku let loose his Yuki, a muddy brown color that saturated Gaara's body. A giant tower of sand exploded upwards, engulfing the entire arena in smoke. As quickly as it had come, the smoke was blown away by a powerful gust of wind. Many of the spectators reeled back in shock and horror at the sight that greeted them. In the center of the arena, standing at least a good 30 meters in height, stood the terror of Tsunegakure, the Ichibi no Shikaku. Oh, this is so not good, Asuma said with a groan. Releasing his bijou here. Is he insane? Asked Kurenai with a shout. We need to do something before Naruto gets killed. Now hold up, Nai-chan, said Enko before Kurenai whirled on her. Hold up. Hold up. Naruto is not facing off against some insane ninja. He's fighting a bijou. There is no way a genin, no matter how good, can fight that thing. And you can? Asked Anko, looking at her with an incredulous look. None of us have the power to fight a bijou. Besides, look down at the Gaki, he's completely calm. Kurenai frowned but did as told. Anko was right, Naruto did look rather calm. To be honest, if he was showing any emotion at all, Kurenai had to say it was excitement. There was a large grin on his face as he eyed the giant demon. It looked like he was enjoying the battle more than anything else. I still don't like it, Kurenai said. You don't have to like it, Anko returned. Hell, I don't like it, but there is nothing we can do. Fighting a bijou would crush us. Besides, we've seen what the kid can do. If anyone can defeat that thing, it's him. Well, this is more like it. I was beginning to get bored of fighting the Mini-U, Naruto commented lightly. His eyes took on a red glow, which when combined with his Rinnegan made for a freaky effect. It's time for me to really let loose. You think you've won? I'll kill you. Futon, Rankuden, wind release, wind bullet. As the giant bullet of wind sped towards Naruto, said Blonde unleashed a large ball of Yuki, which he launched at the mass of displaced and compressed air. The two attacks struck, and Naruto's proved to be the stronger by a large margin. It struck the demon in the face, and Naruto decided he was lucky Gaara was no located near its head, since the red head would have been destroyed along with that particular appendage after the blast had struck. Naruto ran towards the giant demon lord, which began sending out sand tendrils to crush him once it regained its head. However, with Naruto having decided to use Yuki for this battle, he was able to use Shundo to great effect in dodging the sand that came his way. Get off! Get off! Shikaku shouted as Naruto appeared on the demon lord's head after one of his Shundos. Shikaku tried to wrap its sand around his ankles, but Naruto used his Yuki to keep himself from getting stuck. Grinning, Naruto placed his hands on the massive demon's head. They began to grow a dark red, and were soon crackling with power as Naruto channeled more and more Yuki into his hands. He soon released it in a powerful burst, and the effects were rather astonishing. Naruto's Yuki was not only very poisonous, but also had a similar to effect to heating. Most of the reason his Yuki blasts disintegrated his opponents when used, was quite simply because his attacks usually ran upwards of 1000 degrees Fahrenheit. That meant anything his Yuki attacks hit, were more or less vaporized. It was a little different with Shikaku. Since the entire creature was made from Yuki-infused sand, the demon lord was much sturdier than most. This meant that its body did not dissolve when struck with a point-blank blast of Naruto's Yuki. Instead, Shikaku was turned into a large shard of glass. Ah! What art! Naruto sniffed as he looked down at his creation. Truly, I should have gone into glass making. Sometimes I astound myself. I shall call it, Demon Lord a la Sand. Too bad I can't let this thing just stand here. Oh well. He tapped his foot on the now glassed bijou's head, cracks started appearing around the spot Naruto tapped, spreading out in an ever-increasing web until the entire demon's body was filled with tiny cracks. Giving one more tap, the demon lord's form shattered. I don't believe it, Kankuro choked out as he stared at the glass shards that fell to the ground. He beat Gaara. Gaara! Temari cried out in worry. Ignoring her other brother's cry of wait, she opened her fan and flew down to the arena floor. There she found Gaara, alive but unconscious. Her youngest brother was sitting on the floor, eyes rolled in the back of his head. And the blonde who had defeated him like he had been fighting Bijou all his life had a hand on his head. What are you doing to him? Cried Temari. Let him go. He's already defeated. She would have just attacked him, but Naruto had Gaara hostage. Relax, said Naruto in a calm voice, his eyes closed. I'm not going to hurt Gaara, but I need to see what is wrong with Shikaku. His words caused Temari to stop short. She tilted her head and a look of confusion crossed her face. What? What do you mean? A smile appeared on Naruto's face. Nothing. Don't worry your pretty little head over a thing. Now, let's see what's behind that cage. Temari heard the boy's last mutterings and wondered what he meant. What cage? Was he? Could it be possible that Naruto was inside of Gaara's seal? But how? Was it the Rinnegan? Temari could only stand there and watch, hoping and praying that her brother would be okay. Man, this place is even more of a dump than my own mind. Naruto said with a grumble as he looked around the redhead's mind. The entire place looked like a desert, everywhere he looked was sand, sand and more sand. Well, maybe it was a little better than the sewers his had been. Not that Naruto could access it anymore, since he no longer had a seal he couldn't actually enter his mind anymore. Oh well, there was nothing useful there for him anyways as far as he was concerned. Looking around, Naruto decided on a destination to head to. A place where he saw a giant cavern in a large wall. Naruto disappeared in a blur of speed and made it to the cage in record time. The cage was a lot like his, with large steel gray bars, and a seal in the center. However, he noticed that the seal was frayed and worn. It looked like someone had taken a fire jutsu to it. Inside of the cave was Shikaku, and yet, it wasn't. There was something that he couldn't see, yet he could feel. It was like Shikaku held two souls, which was impossible. And yet, that was what he was feeling from the Demon Lord, and it seemed the beast had learned of his presence, for it whirled around and glared at him. "It's you! What are you doing here?" Though it spoke brashly, Naruto heard the worry in its voice. Not surprising, it probably realized just how helpless it was. He ignored it for the moment as he tried to decide what to do. "You!" Naruto turned and saw Gaara standing just a little behind him. The boy looked frightened. "What are you doing here? How did I get here? What's going on?" Naruto had to blink at the rapid-fire questions the boy was asking. He was rather surprised the boy was being so emotional. Then again, it's not every day the demon you're carrying inside of you gets beat in 5 minutes flat by a genin. "Oh, I'm just here to see what's wrong with Shikaku," Naruto said lightly. Gaara stopped and blinked at him. "What? Shikaku, something's wrong with him," Naruto repeated. "I doubt you can feel it, but I can sense two souls coming from Shikaku." "Two souls?" Gaara muttered. "Could it be? I had been told that the Shikaku was an insane priest who was sealed into a tea kettle." "A priest?" Naruto looked thoughtful for a moment. Yes, a priest could merge with a demon if done right. Though they and the demon they merged with would lose their minds. It is a very foolish thing to do, especially attempting to merge with a demon lord. The blonde sighed. "Very well, it looks like that priest is going to have to go." "What are you doing?" asked Gaara, who by now seemed to realize Naruto wasn't going to hurt him. Though he was curious as to why. "I'm going to get rid of that priest, what else?" asked Naruto in a rhetorical fashion. Anyone stupid enough to try and merge with a demon is dangerous. Besides, that priest is the entire reason Shikaku is so insane. Once the priest is gone, Shikaku should become normal again, and you should be able to sleep. Gaara's eyes widened. Really? Really? Naruto walked up to the cage and glared at the giant sand demon. "I'll kill you!" it screeched at him. Naruto ignored its cries as he rushed through the cage. "What are you?" "No! No! Stop this! I will not die! You can't! You can't! I can, and I will!" Naruto shouted as his hand was plunged into Shikaku's head. With an upward yank, Naruto pulled out a ghastly, pale white soul. It wiggled and squirmed as if trying to break free. Shikaku quieted and began to sink down, as layers and layers of sand dissolved from its body. Naruto jumped back out of the cage and held the soul. "Disgusting," he muttered before cocking his yuki-covered fist and plowing it into the soul. There was a piercing wail that emanated from the soul as it was destroyed. When the apparition was gone, the clearing was silent. "There!" Naruto said in a pleased voice. He was rather proud of himself. Naruto had only been getting the basics of his Rinnegan down, and only knew that he could theoretically drag a soul out of a body. He had never actually tried it before, but that he was capable of doing so on his first try made him feel very good about himself. He turned to the stunned-looking Gaara. "The real Shikaku should be waking up in about an hour. When he does, I suggest you two talk. If he starts being stubborn, tell him that Raizen's descendant will beat his ass for not working with you." "Okay, Gaara said. Not like he could have said anything else. He was still trying to understand what the hell just happened. "Alright then. It looks like my work here is done." Laters, Naruto came back to the real world. Time inside of a seal was notoriously slow, so not much more than a second had elapsed outside of the seal. He looked at Temari and smiled. Gaara's going to be fine, he said. He set the red head on the ground and stepped back, allowing Temari to rush to her brother's side. Just make sure he gets a lot of uninterrupted rest. From what I understand, he has 12 years of making up to do. Temari looked at the blonde who had just defeated Gaara's demon. Not just beaten it, but did so easily. He could have killed Gaara, but he hadn't, and whatever the blonde had done, Temari was sure it had been beneficial. Thank you, she said with a watery smile. You're welcome. Now, Naruto's eyes narrowed as he looked up at the Kage booth. I want you to tell all of your forces that Orochimaru has killed and is impersonating your Kage. Tell them they are not to attack with Oto, and any that do will be killed. Understand? Temari's eyes widened. Not just at the fact that he knew about the invasion, but what he said about her father as well. What? Orochimaru has killed and impersonated your Kazekage, that man you see up there is not your father. Tell all your invading forces to either back off or help us drive off Oto. Do you understand? Asked Naruto in a growl. Why yes, Temari stuttered. Good, then get to it. And with that Naruto disappeared. He reappeared right next to the disguised Orochimaru, whose eyes widened as the blonde threw his fist out. There was a large explosion that destroyed the seat that the Hibi-Sannin was sitting on, and the entire wall behind it. However, Orochimaru had managed to escape, using his quick reflexes to jump out of the way. Orochimaru! Naruto roared as he came at the disguised Sannin again. Today's the day you die. I just hope you give me a better fight than these wet behind-the-ear genin. How did he find out who I was? Orochimaru was forced to shed his disguise as Naruto's Yuki-enhanced fist blew another hole where he had been just seconds before. The two of them landed on a roof not far from the stadium. The entire area was now pandemonium. As the shock of their leader's discovery wore off, the Oto ninja that had disguised themselves as civilians began attack anyone they could. However, they soon found out that without the genjutsu that Kabuto had been going to cast in effect, they were outmanned and outmatched. Mato Guy, who had arrived a little while ago with his student Rock Lee, was a whirlwind force of destruction. He had already shed his weights, determining that in a battle for the safety of his village, he could not afford to hold back. He used his fists and feet to pound any ninja that was close to him into the ground, or the air, or through a wall. Every hit he sent broke bones and liquefied insides. Asuma had his trench knives out. They were covered in green wind chakra, and he was using them to their greatest potential as he sliced through Oto ninja in his way. While he may not have Guy's enthusiasm when it came to fighting, he was more than able of handling the ninja that were in his path. Right by his side, Kurenai was using her genjutsu to confuse any opponent that Asuma did not get right off the bat. She would use her skills and stealth to sneak up behind them and slit their throat, or kill them with a well-thrown kunai. Mostly, she worked defensively, allowing the more battle-oriented Asuma to take charge, and just a little ways away from her was none other than Anko. Currently, said woman was cackling in glee as she launched several snakes at any enemies that got close. The snakes clamped down on the Oto ninja, not only eliciting screams of pain, but slowly killing them from the snake venom her summons carried. While she killed her enemies, Anko was releasing a string of taunts and insults at all those who were still alive, enraging them further and making them that much easier to kill. All around the stadium similar battles were taking place. Izumo and Kotetsu were using teamwork to defeat anybody that came to close. Genma was attacking several Oto ninja that appeared on the arena floor. Huddled together were the Konoha 12, those who had not sent to the infirmary. Shikamaru was using his Kagemain no Jutsu to hold enemies in place, while Tenten bombarded them with kunai. Shino had his bug sucking the chakra of any enemy ninja that got too close, while Hinata and Kiba were using their respective taijutsu styles to deal as much damage as they could. Even Ino was doing what she could, using her Shintenshin no Jutsu to take over people's mind and have them kill their teammates. The only people who weren't fighting were Sakura, who was huddled in her seat in fear, praying for her Sasuke-kun to save her. And Lee, who was unfortunately too injured to fight and had to rely on Tenten for protection. A little ways from them was none other than Uchiha Sasuke. Said Genin was currently slaughtering Oto ninja left and right, an insane grin on his face as he reveled in his skills and the power he had over these weak opponents. Baki! Temari shouted as she neared her sensei, who was fighting with Genma. Baki! The Kazekage has been killed. That man is really Orochimaru in disguise. What? He hadn't been close enough to hear what had been said by the blonde, and only saw him attack their Kage. Orochimaru killed our Kage and disguised himself to get into the Chunin exams. Temari shouted. We've been used. Shit. Baki did not doubt Temari's words. She would never lie about something so important, she rarely ever lied period. Which meant she was right and this battle was meaningless. Looks like our battle has ended, he told Genma as he leaped back. I'm going to recall our forces and help you drive out Oto. How can we trust you? Asked Genma. You did just attack us, and from the looks of things you guys have been planning this for a while now. It was our Kazekage's orders, Baki said. However, it seems our Kazekage was wrong to trust that snake. If he is dead, then fighting you would be pointless. Very well, Genma said. Inform your men of what's happened and change your allegiance, I'll let those on my side know as well. Thank you, Baki nodded to the Konoha Jonin, before turning around. Come on Temari, let's find Kankuro. Hi, Kukuku, well done Naruto-kun, Orochimaru chortled. Tell me, how did you know who I was? Naruto cocked his head to the side and tapped his fingers to his temple. Not much can get past these eyes, Orochimaru. Surely, you know the stories of the Rinnegan. Of course, and such delectable stories they are. Naruto felt a shiver of disgust run up his spine as Orochimaru licked his lips and eyed him like a piece of meat. If even half the myths on those eyes are true, then they would be very powerful. You won't be laying a finger on these eyes, Orochimaru, Naruto said. Today is the day your life ends. Kukuku, you're welcome to try Naruto-kun, Orochimaru said. I wanted to test your potential anyways. Both fighters slid into their respective stances as they prepared for battle. Around them a purple barrier sprang up as 4 people in white robes with a purple bow holding them closed appeared on roof. Naruto took in the double barrier, noting that it was both designed to keep people in as well as out. Picking up a rock, Naruto threw it and watched as the barrier sizzled and the rock disintegrated. You like? Asked Orochimaru with a grin on his face. It's a rather genius Kekai ninjutsu, barrier ninjutsu, that I created. It's called Shinshienjin, for Violet Flame's battle encampment. The barrier does not allow anyone to enter or exit so long as the ninja are unharmed. The body of anyone touching it will immediately be engulfed in flames. In addition, there is no way to destroy the formation from inside the barrier, since the 4 people also have a barrier on the inside protecting them. So breaking out is extremely difficult, if not impossible. I had originally designed it so I could kill Sarutobi-sensei without any interference. However, I think I would much rather test your potential. The old man's death can wait for another day. Naruto smiled. You say that like you actually have a chance of surviving this encounter, Orochimaru. I assure you, this will be the last stand you make. Kukuku, then why don't we begin? Suggested Orochimaru. A grin formed on Naruto's face, one that threatened to split his face in half. Very well. Naruto blurred from view as the battle began. Naruto-kun. Sarutobi shouted as he jumped in front of the barrier. The ANBU team he had gotten together all stopped with him, all except one who ended up running straight into the purple barrier. The man was killed near instantaneously, his smoking and burnt corpse fell to the ground with a meaty thud. I don't think there's any way to get in this barrier, the ANBU captain said pensively as his commanding officer watched the battle going on inside anxiously. That's it for part 4. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.